Hey guys, welcome to Code and Box Automation Lab. This is Sherful. Today's our topic is about exception. So we'll know what is exception in terms of Java, as well as it can we can use the same concept in our Selenium based test cases too, Selenium based test case frame. So we'll see what is exception, how to handle the exception, different types of exception too. Okay, so let's go to some theory, actual theory. So first we'll see what is exception. So when an error occurred in a program during execution, Java will throw an error message, which is technically called exception or throwing an error. As a result, in Selenium, so your test case will get failed and it will stop to execute, because if there is an error happen, like programmatical error, your execution always stops. So it means your test case will fail and execution always stops. So if there is an exception arise during our execution or during our test cases, there is a way we can handle that exception so that our test case doesn't fail or doesn't stop to execute. It can move on, and it's also notify us some information, so that we can log that information and find out what's the problem. Anyway, so before we see how we can handle the exception, we'll see the type of exception. So in Java there is a super class, it's called Throwable class, and it has two subclass. One is error, another one is exception. Error, it means it can happen, it's not a programmatical error, it's some memory related error, or say example out of memory errors, like if your RAM some reason it's out of memory, it's full, then it will throw an error and it will tell you it's out of memory error. Stack overflow error, like if you have for some reason you have a loop, for loop or any loop, it's infinity loop, then eventually it will tell you throw an error, it's called stack overflow error. Or if you have a method 1 and it's calling method 2, and same thing it's happening in a method 2, it's calling method 1, so it's like calling one method each other reversely, and it will when you execute it once upon a time, it will tell you throw an error, it's called stack overflow error. So other hand, there is a exception, which is programmatical error. So exception is two types. One is IO exception or input output exception, and another runtime exception. So input output exception is like file not found exception. So if for example you are in your test cases, you are reading some data from external source, external file, but the path or directory of the file is not right, that time it will throw an exception. It will say file not found exception for that data. Unknown host exception, interrupted exception, and mail formatted URL exception. So those are called IO exception. Other hand, the runtime exception is like arithmetic exception. Say if you want to divide 1 by 0, it will throw an exception because it doesn't make sense. So the error would be arithmetic exception. Null point exception, if you create an object of a class and you put in a reference variable, say A, but some reason your reference variable is missing to refer that object of the class, that time it will throw a null point exception. Index out of boundary exception, say you have a class, you have a array, the 5 index, and length is 5, but you are trying to print the value of index 10, which is not which is out of boundary. And if you try to print that index number 10, value of index number 10, it will throw an exception. That's called index out of bound exception. Similarly, there is other runtime exception is like class cat exception, illegal argument exception, no such element exception. Okay, so let's see how we can handle those exceptions in our real life. Okay, handling any unexpected programming behavior during runtime is called exception handling. So in Java, there is an exception handling mechanism which is applicable in Selenium 2 based on Selenium Java framework. According to that, if a known method gets failed at runtime at certain condition, then we can handle that exception using a mechanism which is known as try-catch block. Let's see the syntax of the try-catch block. So there will be keyword try and catch, and inside a try there will be try block. It means inside a try the code will be related, the error code you are trying to execute, say 1 divided by 0. That's the code you are trying to run, which is error, but still you can put the the error code inside this try block, and the catch block will have the code to handle the try block. Okay, it will support your, if some reason your try block fail, your catch block will execute. Okay, now let's get back to Eclipse and try to do some real practice example. I have a class, it's called exception demo, and it's a main method. Okay, here example I wanna, okay, there is a simple, I will do very simple array. So array A, and it has some value, say example 1, 2, integer value 3, 4. Okay, so those are all integer value, and I'm trying to print this out. I'm trying to print say example A of say 10. Sorry, I'm trying to print A of 10. That doesn't make sense because I have the index is 0, 1, 2, 3. So I have the index up to 3, but I'm trying to print the index of 10, right? So that should not valid. It's not a valid. It should throw an exception. Let's run it. See what happened. Okay, you can see here it's saying exception in thread main. Okay, here it's saying in main method there is an exception happen, and the type of exception is called array index out of bounds exception 10. It means it's a here it's a array index, the array index which is 10, it's out of boundary exception because I don't have any value. The array I have is not the index up to 10 or more. Okay, so it's this is the exception happened. This is a programmatical exception or error, and you can see this is called the line number. What line it's happened the exception? So line number 7. Okay, this is the exception. Now say this is a known exception. We know how we can handle in our real life this context. So still I wanna run this program with this exception, but I don't want to stop my execution. So that time your try catch block comes to the picture. Okay, how can I do this? To do this I have to create, I will create a try and catch block. Let's do it. So here I will create the try block, and then I will create the catch block, and here is it, catch block, and inside a catch block I have to call that same exception, the specific exception, either like array index out of bounds exception, or I can call the just exception class. Either way, you will see a lot of people they use exception class, which is a generic, which is cover any kind of exception, or you can call specific exception, whatever the exception happen, right? That class, and say, and also the variable. Okay, and for here I will create the the catch block. So this is my try block. So I'm trying the, this is my try block. Let's make it this, right? So I'm trying, this is my error code. I'm trying, so error code goes to the try block, and the catch, this is, so what type of exception? This is the array index exception, out of bounds exception, and this is, variable, and inside this is my catch block. So in a catch block, I will say, I'll print something, sys out. I'm going to say something went wrong. Something went wrong. Something went wrong in try block. And then I am in a catch block. Let's get the exception. Okay, so I will say the exception it's below, as below, is as below. How about this? Okay, so this is the try block. Okay, let me finish this part, and then, so when you will execute the code, this program, our code will try this, we'll try the try block code. If try block code failed, it gets some error. It will not stop the program. It will jump to catch block, and it will execute the code whatever in catch block. So this catch block is to support, it's to handle our try block, the code. So here is my code for the catch block that I'm saying. So this is, I'm just printing some messages. So I'm saying something went wrong in try block, and then I'm saying I'm in catch block, and the exception is as below. It means, I'm gonna print the exception. So to print the exception, actual exception, we can use this, the variable e dot, and there is a method, it's called print stack trace. So this will print the exception. What is the exception? Array index out of bounds exception. It's occur. It will print this exception, right? And here also I can do, say I can print get message, and also I can print also get cost. So let's see sys out. So I'm saying message is, let's use concatenation. It's e dot, there is a method, is called get message, and also there is a method is called get cause method. So same thing, I will say here, just cause is e dot, let's use the get cause. Okay, throwable. Okay, good. So let's save it and let's print it. You can see what's happened. Here you go. You can see it's saying, so when it's run this code, our compiler will try to execute this try block first. So when you see that there is an error happen, so it will not stop, other than it's stopping the execution, the compiler comes to the catch block, and in catch block it's saying it's get the first printing message. Something went wrong. You can see I'm in a catch block, so it's printing this message, and the exception is as below. This is the exception. Actual, what type of exception is array index out of bounds exception. Okay, this comes from through this, right? And after this, I'm saying printing message is the e.get message method. So e.get message method, its message is 10. Okay, it's a what is what is the the masses. This method is gets the actual the value gets the exception, the error happened for the 10 index. So that's why it's 10, and the cause is null, because there is no such element or data for index 10, so that's why it's null. Okay, so this is exception, and after that there is a you will see a lot of people they use with a try catch block. There is another block, it's called finally block. A lot of people they use, even I use in real life. I will explain you why, and let's see how to use the finally block. It's called finally keyword, and there is a opening and curly braces, and there will be body for the final sits out, and let's print here some messages. This is finally block. Okay, let's save it, let's print it, then I'll explain you. Okay, here in a console you can see it's printed the catch block, all the the code as per the printing, everything is execute the catch block, since the try block gets error, and then it's also print it's execute the code from the finally block too, right? It means finally is such a block that comes with the try catch block after the try catch block. So it means this finally code or block will get executed regardless your try catch block works or not. If some reason your try blocks gets failed, your catch block will work, and even if the catch block gets some issues, your finally block will get executed whether its try catch block works or not. And in real life, I can give you a real life Selenium example. In a real life Selenium example, you may have a connection with your database, from your Selenium project, from your framework, and you have a connection with your database, and you need to query some data from your database. So in your try block, you put the all of the credential for your database and also the code for the query. So you ran that code, some reason your query didn't work. Okay, so your test case will be failed right away. So you still put this code, the query, in your try block, and after your query, you will have a more code to disconnect or log out from your database and come back to your regular UI or regular test cases. So if your query gets failed, that time you will not able to log out from the database, because your execution will not move to your compiler will not move to the next line. The a disconnection, which the code is about the disconnect the database. So in catch block, you will put some message, something went wrong in your try block, as well as you can get the cause and message. You can get the actual the error, what happened in your catch block, so that you can troubleshoot your issue. But in finally block, you can put the actual code related to disconnect from your database. So it means since finally block will execute, so no matter what happened in your try block, either query works or not, as well as your database, the code related to disconnect from database even is failed, it's still this code will execute. Your final block will execute. So finally you will able to exit from your database, and you can move on with the next test cases, also your next code. So that's the real life example in Selenium, where you can use your finally block with try catch block. Okay, now we'll see how we can handle this exception not to do doing this try catch over here, right? Other than you can handle your exception from a method, through a method. How can you do this? Let's remove all the codes, or I will keep this 2-line, copy. Let's remove all the code here. Okay, this is your main method. Let's put here, I would say let's create a method here, name it public, since okay, public static, say static void, say give a name array exception. So this is the method, and this is the method. Inside I'll put the code here, and then I will say I will call this method from main method. Okay, I'll call this method from the main method. Okay, let's save it. Let's run it again, see what happened. We're supposed to get same type of error. Okay, we got the same error, which is array index out of bounds exception, right? So this is array exception is a method we can handle, and we call this method inside the main method here. So we can handle, so this is, we know that this is a out of index boundary out of index exception. So we can handle this error or exception through this method, when you call the method from this method using the try catch block from this method calling. So we call this method from here. We can do it over here instead of using the try catch block over here. How can we do this? So here is this is our method. Here we can say we can use a keyword. It's called throws exception. Okay, so you can see here we got already suggestion. It's saying, so it means like when you use the throw exception, it says like this code, for this code we can throw an exception where from where this method got called. So this method got called from inside the main method here. So if you hover your mouse, you can see it's giving you to fix or to advise. So it's saying one is add throw declaration, another one is surround with try catch. Let's click on with try catch. So now our method inside a try catch block. So it means we call the method, we put this one inside a try block. So it means it will when you call this method, it means the method will do exactly what is over here inside a try block. If it's a fail, the catch block will handle this or will cover this try block. Okay, so we can say here, and here you can see it's automatically use the exception class other than the specific array index out of bound exception. Either you can use this one, or you can just use the generic exception class. Okay, here and I can, before I print this will get exactly the error name. So before with this, I can just let's print something else to see this out. I'm saying here I will say catch block maybe inside the main method, because this try catch block is now inside the main method. I'm using the try catch block from the main method, so and using the actual method gets called. Okay, here, and I can do this. So let's save it, run it. Here we go, you can see. So now inside the main method and there is a try catch block. So in a try block there is we call the method, this method. So it's execute this code, and it says okay, there is an error So since it's got the try block got an error, it comes to the catch block, and it will execute the code in catch block. So it first print this message, and after that it's execute this method print stack trace, okay, which is the actual the error it's happened, and also it's give at the end the line number where we got the exception. Okay, so that's the other way you can handle your exception from calling that method. Okay, so your try catch block will be inside the actual when a method gets called. Okay, so that's the two way you can use try catch block, and you can handle your exception. Okay, so let's get back to the recap or some notes. Okay, so as far we have seen, Throwable is a superclass, and it has two subclass as error and exception, and all the programmatical problem it's called exception, and we've seen all different kinds of exception, right? One of our example was related out of boundary index out of boundary exception. And to handle the exception, we use the try catch block. So try block, it means it's a block of code to try error, and a catch block of code to handle error. And a finally block, it's not a mandatory use finally block, but there is a benefit to use. I already explained you. So what is finally block? Final block of code will execute after try catch regardless of the result. So finally code will execute always, either try catch block works or not. Okay, so that's the summary of her exception and how to handle the exception. Okay guys, that's all for today, and thank you for watching. You have a good one.